this is Constance from Mysterious Galaxy. I am very excited because this Saturday we have a Sleuths and Sidekicks Saturday book discussion, which I'm so happy I did not get tongue-tied on that. I had to say it extra slowly so that I didn't mix up my words. But I am really excited because we have 4 amazing mystery authors here with us this afternoon. I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Jen, who's going to read everyone's bio and introduce you to everyone. But before I do, there are 2 quick things for you guys. If you have any questions for our authors, which that's the best part of the event, is getting to ask them questions. Make sure that you ask questions down below. You'll see a little button that says ask a question, and as that would imply, just click that button and that's where you can submit your questions. And then also, the best way to celebrate authors is to buy their amazing books. And if you would like to purchase their books and get a personalized book plate, there is a buy book button down below that is in a very pretty mint green color. And on that note, I will pass it off to you, Jen, and I will see you guys for the Q&A.
Fabulous. Thank you, Constance, and thank you, Mysterious Galaxy, for having us and everyone for joining us. We are so looking forward to this conversation. And I'm Jen Collins-Moore. I'm the author of the new Maggie White Mystery Series, and I'm here with 3 fabulous mystery authors to talk about our detectives and the people who help them. And you guys know with Crowdcast, use the chat, introduce yourselves, ask questions. We really want to make this an interactive type of format. And now, to get everything started, I want to tell you a little bit about who we have here. So first is Tina deBellegarde, the author of Future Witness, nominated for both Treat West and Blue Pencil Agency's first novel award. It's a brand new book that came out in September, and it's the first in Tina's Batavia on Hudson mystery series. Tina lives in Catskill, New York with her husband, Dennis, and their cat, Shelby. And when she isn't writing, Tina is helping Dennis tend their beehives, harvest shiitake mushrooms, and cultivate their vegetable garden. She travels to Japan regularly to visit her son, Alessandro. And Tina, I'm so interested in your background. You cover such diverse geographic areas. I know that's going to come up in our conversation. Next up, we have Carol Pouliot. She's the author of the Blackwell and Watson Time Travel Mystery Series, which is now on its 2nd book. Carol is a retired language teacher who volunteered with USAID and also owned a translating agency that provided translations in 24 languages. Carol lives in central New York, where the snow reaches over 12 feet every year. Carol, do you have any snow yet?
We did, but it melted.
Okay, all right. At least we started December with dry ground. That's a good start. And finally, we have Lida Sideris, author of the Southern California Mystery Series. She is now on her 4th book. Her first stint out of law school was a newbie lawyer's dream, working as an entertainment lawyer for a movie studio, kind of like her heroine, Annie Locke, except without the homicides. Lida was one of 2 national winners of the Helen McCoy Mystery Writers of America Scholarship Award for her first book, and she lives in the northern tip of Southern California with her family, rescue dogs, and flock of uppity chickens. I'm in awe of that. Would love to have chickens someday. But I'm Jen Collins-Moore. I transport readers to Rome in my new series, the Maggie White Mysteries. The first book is Murder on the Piazza, which came out this fall. And it's been called the perfect blend of funny and smart. It is filled with art, history, and food of Europe's greatest city. I'm also the founder of Mies Meals, Chicagoland's most popular meal kit service. So food is near and dear to my heart. You'll see lots of it in my book. And I live in Chicago with my husband and my 2 sons. And now I want to dive right into it because we are here to talk about sleuths. And I'd love for each of you to tell me a little bit about your detectives and where your inspiration came from. And Tina, I'd love to start with you.
Thank you, Jen. So my sleuth is Bianca, and she's a recently widowed youngish woman, and she's trying to fit into her new community. And she's a historian, and that's really what makes her a good sleuth, because she's good at making connections, solving problems, and she's a writer, and she's doing research, and she befriends the local village historian who tells her all about the village, and she picks up lots of village secrets. She shares her journals with her. And so she has this ammunition, all this information, And she's also very observant, and she's an outsider also. And being an outsider gives her a different perspective than all the locals, that they're not always so willing to see things, right? And, as far as my inspiration, I love Miss Marple and Jessica Fletcher. I just love those smart women who can see things that maybe get missed otherwise. And I tried to make Bianca one of those smart, strong women without, she's a compulsive problem solver. I'm a compulsive problem solver. And one of the issues with that is you see problems that people don't see. And that's not always welcome. And since she's new and she's an outsider and she's trying to fit in, it causes trouble. So she needs to tiptoe a little around, neighbors, and they're a little suspicious. And but that's my amateur sleuth.
I love that. I love that. Now, Lita, yours isn't really going looking for problems. Hers come to her. Tell us about where you come from.
The inspiration for my heroine was myself when I was a 26-year-old attorney. But as you mentioned, without the homicide, so my life was pretty dull compared to hers. I wanted to create, like Tina, a smart, accomplished heroine who is also very fearless. And so I took my younger self and gave her some qualities that I never had. She's the daughter of a well-known private investigator, and as a teen, she followed him to crime scenes. And so she's very comfortable around crime scene investigation. She's very comfortable in the morgue. She's comfortable at forensics labs. So, she's got all the qualities to be a perfect sleuth. However, in my first book, the first in the series, she's a very reluctant sleuth because something happens to her father, and so she doesn't want to take that road. She wants to play it safe. But things happen to her because she actually loves sleuthing. You can't keep away from it. She loves taking risks, and so blackmail's thrown out at her. A murder investigation is thrown at her, and so she progresses as the series goes on.
Well, and I love the way detectives get drawn into a case, because there's always a different thing, whether they're sticking their nose in or whether the case lands right in their lap. And my hero, Maggie White, she is a middle-aged American who is living in Rome on her husband's expat assignment. She thinks living in Rome, she's going to have this great, easy life. She's not working. And then she finds out that instead of it being this magical sort of extended vacation, she's a woman who needs to be doing something, who needs to be busy. So she takes a job with a company that offers painting tours of Rome. Sounds wonderful. Turns out she's the boss from hell. And she's the one thinking about all these nice things that could happen to him, like stepping in front of a bus, maybe having a heart attack in the middle of the night. We've all worked for people like that. We wish would just disappear from the scene. That doesn't happen. Instead, she finds him shot dead. And so again, just like you, the trouble comes to her. But in her case, she gets pulled in because the police don't think she's a suspect. And she's this woman who's been living in Rome, and no one's paying much attention to her. And she's sort of saying, what do you mean I'm not a suspect? Well, she's in that world of the crime coming to her. But, we're not all in that space. Carol, yours is very different because your detective is Paige. So where did your inspiration come from for him? Because, we were talking about women. You've got a man. Tell us about yours.
Right. Well, I had a very strange experience a long time ago. I was 29, living in my first apartment by myself, and in the middle of the night, I woke up and there was a strange man at my bedroom door, which, you can just imagine every woman's terrifying moment and fear. My heart went from pounding to stopping. My brain was screaming, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I just froze. And this man, who I still can picture 100% clearly now, 30 years later, he looked in, sort of peered in at me, shook his head, stood up, and then he walked through the wall. And I just, oh my God, what just happened? And so that first night took me a long time to go back to sleep. It happened 4 nights in a row. At the 4th night, I decided to say something, and he came, and I did say something, and he walked through the wall, and he never came back. So I still don't know what happened. I have no idea what that was. But over the years, I thought I would like to write a mystery. And I thought, wouldn't that be cool if that guy was living like, a long time ago and I saw him. So I did some research and I found out that Einstein had a theory that there's no such thing as past, present, or future, that all time happens at the same time, and that given the right circumstances, time can fold over. So that is the basis for my series. That strange man became my detective, Stephen Blackwell, and I used that experience for him to meet his future sidekick, Olivia, when time folds over in the house that they share, 80 years apart. So
that
strange.
Just gives me, I get chills whenever you talk about that. And the fact you were able to turn that into art and make it a what-if exercise for a detective story, I love.
Well, thanks. It was so scary. I can't believe I didn't die of a heart attack.
And when you were thinking about him and this series you wanted to write, you made the choice to make him a professional policeman. Obviously, mystery readers read the whole range from amateur sleuths to police procedurals. Why did you go for the detective side of things, or the paid professional side?
Well, I like police procedurals, and it was easier for me as a writer to create a police procedural. I think I'm creative and I get a lot of good ideas, but I really wanted to have the structure of an established policy for police investigation. They have a logical order and a method that they use, and methods that they have to use to keep the crime scene uncontaminated, to keep evidence in a proper way, and so forth. And actually, I made Stephen like that too. He operates best with a structure. He is effective because he's very well organized and he works within the framework of all the evidence that he and his team collect. As a matter of fact, for every investigation, he sets up one of these old blackboards with a wooden frame that are on wheels from like old schools, like a zillion years ago. And he tacks the crime scene photos around the frame, and he writes notes and lists and makes diagrams and stuff. And I've also given all my books the structure of 1 week. So the murder happens right at the beginning, and a week later, Stephen knows who did it and why and how. So structure.
Oh, your structure makes me so jealous. I envy that. Lita, how about you? Are you in the structured thing when you're doing first draft? Is your hero, your detective structured in her sleuthing? How do you read that?
I'm in such admiration of Carol and her characters, her main characters, because they are so structured. They know what they're going to do. They're totally organized. My heroine is not like that in any way. I wish. I'm afraid that when I do write that first draft, it's like shooting from the hip. I just go forward, but I do get to the end, and I do outline each chapter once the first draft is done, because I do need to have some organization, or I might lose my mind. But I made her a semi-professional sleuth because she's a lawyer with her day job, but she doesn't get paid for any sleuthing she does. And again, because of what happened to her father, she doesn't want to quite go there yet. But I like the fact that she's underestimated by everyone, because despite the fact that she is the daughter of a PI, no one expects her to do anything. And because of that, she can go places. If they think, oh, it's her again, just forget it. But she goes places and she discovers things because they're not paying any attention to her. So that's a benefit to her. And as the series progresses, I didn't want the characters to be stagnant. I wanted them to progress as well. So by the time the fourth book came out a few weeks ago, she's deciding whether or not she and one of her sidekicks should open their own PI agency, and we're trying to gather seed money just for that. So she's come a long way, and that's what I was hoping. I wanted to see some progress, because that's what happens to people. But I have tried to write Carol's way. It just didn't work for me. I couldn't do it. So again, great admiration for Carol.
Well, and I think that idea of being underestimated as a detective, it's something that really resonates for me. Yours is a young woman who people sort of dismiss. Mine is at the other side, that I wanted to make a middle-aged woman. Her children are grown. She's not working at her old corporate job, and she's kind of dismissed. And I think, that's sort of a theme that women in all phases of their lives have felt, that maybe people look at them and say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, honey, move over. And so I was really interested in that idea, too, of a woman who gets dismissed. And I populated my book with a lot of women of a certain age who maybe people think couldn't possibly be involved in what's going on, right? Nobody needs to look at the old grannies. Nobody needs to look at these older women. Because I think there is that world of detectives who you need to look below the surface, and this impression of what we're giving off, there's a lot more to it than's going on. And I was really, because mine is an amateur sleuth, a straight amateur, is that Maggie needs to have a relationship with the police. We can't make the police idiots, but then at the same point, she needs to be able to solve the mystery, right? And so that push-pull is going on. And so in mine, the way I was thinking about it is, you've got the Italian police who don't need to tell her everything that's going on in the investigation. Police don't do that. They don't tell all the witnesses everything in a big city. So she's gathering information on her own, coming to conclusions that are different from them. And I liked that opportunity for her to be exploring the city while there's this detective case, by professionals going on in the background. But that's in a big city. And that's very different, Tina, from your setting, where I think the relationship with the police is different. How did you think about that?
Yeah, it is different. And it's one of the reasons I'm glad I chose a small town. It was sort of a bonus to choosing a small town as my setting, because I absolutely wanted to write an amateur sleuth. I just love that type of character. But obviously she can't just do this. She can't just investigate and come to all her conclusions and solve the crime and book them, Bianca, right? She can't do that. So she's working with the sheriff. And, she has her own sidekicks because that's part of, that nice dynamic in the village. But she sort of ends up being his sidekick. And in a small town, I just felt that was a little bit more real. I don't want to say realistic, but more possible, right? Bending that rule a little bit. And I live in a town like this, and I really don't think it's that far-fetched to assume that there could be some chat between a local and the sheriff over things that maybe they shouldn't be communicating about, but they do. And so they have this interesting push-pull. He's reluctant to share, to get her involved, but she participates in certain things and gives you good information. And there's also a little romantic tension there. And I played with that. And like you said, tried to make the authority figure, so the sheriff in this case, have be good at what he does and have a valuable investigation running while she's, stumbling along, perhaps getting into scrapes, but then offering something of value as well. So she sort of enhances him while also interfering at the same time. That, like you said before, push-pull.
I think that's a great point. And the other part of that push-pull that's going on, and part of the name of our panel, is Sleuths and Sidekicks. So nobody here is solving these cases on their own. I think in all the great detective stories, there's somebody else on the scene. And sometimes it's the traditional Sherlock Holmes, Watson, where there's the sidekick who's just going to sort of let the detective pontificate. And then you've got ones who are really bringing things to the case and helping out in that. And I think, Carol, when you were telling us about your book in the very beginning, the whole premise of it is that there are two people going on. And you told us about Stephen. How did you think about Olivia and what she brought to the table as a sidekick?
Well, her role changes with every book because in the beginning, they're just discovering what's happening to them when they see each other. They spend a week, well, several days actually, doing experiments, trying to figure out about this time travel and time folding over. So for the first book, which is Doorway to Murder, they don't want to take too many risks. So when they go into each other's time, they stay in the house. So in my series, all the crimes take place in 1934, which is Stephen's time. So sort of like Archie and Nero Wolfe. In book one, Olivia stays in the house, and Stephen and she get together in the evenings, and he tells her about the murder investigation, actually double murder investigation and bank robbery. And so she basically just talks with him. She acts a little bit as the sounding board, plays the devil's advocate. And despite the fact that she's, 80 years in the future, she actually is quite instrumental in helping him solve the case. But then in the second book, they've had a couple months to experiment, and they feel more confident in their ability to control the time travel a little bit. So in Threshold of Deceit, Olivia leaves the house for the first time, and she goes around the town in 1934, and she meets people, and she starts making friends. Actually, she substitute teaches for a day, which I had to throw in as a former teacher. It was too much fun. But in any case, she unknowingly befriends one of his main suspects, which actually puts her life in danger. So she's quite a bit more involved in the second book. So each book, her role changes a little bit.
Well, and I love that she's really pushing his thinking, that he's the one, at least in the first book, who's gathering the information, but she's prodding, and that devil's advocate, that sounding board is such an interesting role for a sidekick to play. Lita, you got sort of a cast of sidekicks who are surrounding yours. Are they playing the same type of role, or are they doing something different?
Well, they're all doing something different. There are three of them all together, and I base them on impressions I had of real people that I've had not full encounters with, but brushes with. Michael is Corey's best friend and sort of love interest. He also has sweet tech skills and mechanical skills and culinary skills, which he desperately needs because she's a terrible cook. I based it on an actor that I met in Westwood Village, California, Zachary Levi. He started Chuck and Shazam, and I talked to him for about 10 or 15 minutes, and he seemed like such a fun, wonderful, sweet guy that I said, you know what, I would love to hang around with him on the page. So I took that quick impression and turned him into her sidekick. She also has a legal assistant, Corey does, who I based on another real character, a real person that I saw a celebrity driving around in her convertible Rolls, and that was Queen Latifah. And she looked like she was having such a good time behind that wheel. I thought, Corey would love to hang around with her. So every time I write one part, I picture Queen Latifah, and that makes it more fun for me as well. And then her third sidekick is an assistant deputy district attorney. He follows the rules where she doesn't, so he's a good balance for that. And I base him on another quick encounter I had with a star a few years ago, and that was Tom Selleck when he was in Magnum P.I., toward the end of Magnum P.I. I happened to meet him. He shook this hand. He was such a wonderful guy, and he's so handsome. So I thought, this is going to be my assistant deputy DA. So every time I write those three characters, that's what I think about, and that makes it very fun for me.
I love that you've got such distinct people in your head when you're thinking about them. Have you washed that hand since you met him?
You know what? I can't say.
Thinking about those sidekicks and how they sort of fill in the blanks of what people have in their lives. The way I thought about mine, my hero Maggie is surrounded by some people who are helpful. And Maggie is in Italy. She's sort of a fish out of water. And when I was thinking about it, I was thinking, what does this woman need in her life to really sort of keep pushing her forward? And so what I did was I took a character who is her husband's great aunt and a woman who has always driven her crazy. She's the cool great aunt who would drop into her life and be a bad influence on her kids, basically telling them, how to get away with things they wanted to get away with, how to sneak away their vegetables, whatever it is. The type of aunt we all wish we had growing up, but would be really annoying to be related to if she's undermining your parenting skills. And have this woman come to Italy who Maggie says, oh gosh, this is going to be a nightmare. I'm up to my ears and all these other things. Great Aunt Gertrude doesn't know anything about the case, but she knows Maggie, and she can give Maggie the confidence and the push to use all these skills that she has in her life back home here in Italy. So she might be a fish out of water who's feeling like she's not on solid ground to say, hey, what you have is you're a capable woman who's driven, and giving her that prod she needs. And Tina, your sidekick, you also have a fish out of water story. She's a woman who's in a new town relatively, and that time I think you'll be a newcomer forever. But her sidekicks are people who she hasn't known as long. Who drew you to them? Or who resonated most for you?
Yeah, I populated my story with a whole village, and she sort of develops all these different kinds of friendships with these villagers, and they in many ways become her sidekicks, right? Some of them are gelling to be more pertinent as the story goes and as the series will move on. And so there are a lot of them. It sort of reminds me of the Louise Penny's Three Pines Village, where you have the inspector, so I have the sheriff, but you also have, somehow the villagers always manage to get their nose into this investigation, right? She has some really, a lot of my characters were also drawn like composite characters from people I've met here or people I know, but there's nobody in particular, right, that I have in mind. But she has a friend who's an editor at the Gazette, so she's got tons of information because she's a journalist. She has a neighbor who's a gossip monger. She gets the dirt on everyone. There's a 100-year-old man, or he's approaching 100, who just knows everything because he's lived in the town forever. And I think the one she enjoys working with the most so far is Eugene, and he runs the diner. Stella's Diner is the heart of the town. And everybody loves Stella's. Everybody goes to Stella's at least once a day. And because of that, it's also an information hub. And so, and Eugene's like a bartender. People love to talk to him. He loves to listen. He's kind and, empathetic. And so he knows everything too. So they will just sit across the counter from each other, having a coffee and a croissant, and bounce ideas off each other. So they make an interesting dynamic, I think. But I love them all.
Well, and the food is such a center. It's such a gathering place. It's a natural that's where the town. So
in your book as well, the aromas of the Italian food and the preparation, preparing all that food, and it's so welcoming. It is a gathering spot, right? That's how people gather.
For sure, it's what brings us together. If you're going to solve a crime, you need to gather information. So where people are.
Food.
Around food.
Yeah. Well, we're thinking about the sidekicks. Lita has some fun trivia questions for us, just so that you guys can stop hearing just from us and start participating a little bit. And so Lita has some questions that you can use the chat function to answer. There are no prizes here, just the pride of knowing your mysteries and your detectives the best.
We're going to start out easy and get a little bit harder as we go along. And I'm going to start with a classic detective series. What two cousins helped Nancy Drew on many of her cases?
I know somebody's got to know the answer to this.
I mean, we may not remember their names, but we know she had two cousins. Yeah, see? It's hard to remember their names. I can give a clue of one of them is named. One of them has usually a boy's name. Yeah, I'm with you, Joan. I couldn't remember either. I'll give you the first one starts with a B like boy, and the second one a G, and is typically a boy's name.
Nancy Drew was such a long time ago for all of us.
I know, it really was. Anyway, they are Bess and George. Let's fast forward to a series right now that I think is 26 books strong, and features a sidekick who's a pistol-packing former hoe and wannabe bounty hunter named Lula. Whose sidekick is Lula? I know there has to be someone out there who knows. There we go.
There we go.
Thank you.
Yay.
Joan got it too. Stephanie Plum, thank you. Now I'm going to get a little bit, it's another American sleuth who always keeps a little black dress in her car. And I've read this series and couldn't remember until Carol reminded me. Anyone know who that detective was? Well,
Yeah, Joanne.
we've got an expert on this. It's going to be hard to, let me see if I can fool her. Okay, Who is the British detective with a Spanish name who solves murders in the Shetland Islands?
We really need the Jeopardy music for while we're doing
Right.
I know, right?
I can hear it.
Yeah, we can all play in our minds.
Spanish name. Shetland Islands. Anybody know?
This one never comes to mind for me.
Yeah, I can't remember. Carol, you're going to have to give the answer to that one because I don't remember.
It's Ann Cleeve's Jimmy Perez.
Okay, thank
It's
you.
a great series.
Thank you, thank you. Let's go back in time again to Nick and Nora Charles. They had a sidekick that was a dog. Anyone remember the dog's name? There we go. Good work. Very good. Shall we move on? Go back to our question?
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for participating. Thank you, Drew Ann.
Thank you. Well, one thing that we were talking a little bit is where we were placing our books, and they all are in sort of it's an important part of how we bring our stories to life. And Tina and Lita, you actually even named your series about where they're set. And so I wanted to explore it a little bit more. Lita, why Southern California? What was sparking for you with that?
Southern California is what I know. I live right now in the northern tip in the Santa Barbara area, but it's where I grew up and I'm very familiar with. The difference between my heroine and I is that when I go to places, nothing happens. I go out to dinner in Santa Monica. It's very peaceful. You know, my husband and I are served a nice meal and we leave, and it's wonderful. My heroine, Corey, goes to the same restaurant, orders dinner, isn't served her meal, and is served crime a la mode instead. Not only that, you know, before she can even go after the manager and get her dinner, a shooter enters the restaurant, and it happens to shoot at one of her friends. And this is my latest one, a slightly murderous intent, and he keeps missing his target. So Corey has to find him before he actually hits anyone. And in my first book, my family and I were riding on a ferry across Newport Beach in Orange County. We were at Balboa, and it went uneventfully. It was a wonderful trip across a little bay. Corey takes the same trip. She's pushed into the water. Someone's trying to drown her and wouldn't let her get to shore and shoots at her as well. So I love taking places where nothing has happened to me and make everything happen to my heroine. Because that makes it, I look at every place a whole different way thanks to her. So it makes a lot of fun for me.
I love that. Now, Tina, you're writing about a whole different part of the world, but a part of the world you live in too. So do you approach it the same way, Tina? Are these all places, or Lita, are these all places you've been to that you're just looking out for a little difference, or how do those come together?
Yeah, well, pretty much. Like I also moved up to the Catskill Mountains just recently, a few years back, and I've been coming here since childhood. I'm very attached to it, but I was investigating as well, and I found the area just so beautiful and so relaxing, and I immediately started going on walks the way my protagonist does. Bianca takes walks every day, and besides being beautiful, I realized that there's just so much here that has so much potential for storylines, right? For murders, for stashing bodies, for, you know, and so this I've been thinking about a series, and this is where I'm going to set it. And what I did was, rather than setting it in actual places like Lida did, I kind of created my own village. So Batavia and Hudson is completely fictitious, and I took pieces of the village area, all my favorite parts, and created my own main street and my own, you know, by the side of the Hudson River town. And I actually drew out a map so I could understand my town, so I could write about it accurately. And then I gave it to an artist who made a beautiful map that's on the opening pages of my book. And I just feel like it has beautiful solid 4 seasons that I could work with that. It's very evocative. And you know, setting is one of my favorite things. I love to write about character development, and I love my settings. And my third book, I plan on setting in Kyoto, Japan, because Bianca's son lives there, and my son lives there. And I'm finding a reason in book 2 to get her in book 3 over to Japan. So I'm going to have fun with that setting. It's a beautiful historic city as well. And Yeah.
I love that. Well, you also are using one of the magical things about being a writer, where you get to make the town the way you want. That some of us are writing in places that, you know, when you turn right here, there's going to be a specific street, and we've got to follow a specific map, and you have taken the flexibility of building the town the way you want, which I think is fabulous. And I created one.
And your city is so you bring Rome to life so well that I haven't spent nearly as much time as you have in Rome. But when I was reading, I was back there. It's quite accurate, and I'm really so impressed. I didn't want to do that myself, but I'm very impressed.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, I was thinking about it when Lita was talking about, you know, meeting people and wanting to spend time with them on the page for your side characters. That was really, for me, what Rome was, is that's a place that I wanted to spend time with on the page. And so when I was thinking about setting, I didn't want to set it in Chicago in my everyday life, which I love, but lots of people have written about Chicago extraordinarily well. I wanted to escape and be somewhere different. And, you know, what better place than the place where you can walk down the street and have gelato and have ancient Roman ruins here, and you can have Michelangelo art there. And to me, there was so much evocative things that I wanted to bring to life and where I wanted to be. And I loved bringing it to life through an expat who's fairly new to the city, so she can be seeing it with sort of fresh eyes, the way a visitor might be seeing it. So for me, that was where I chose my place. Now, Carol, when you're thinking of place, for you, it's not just place, it's also time. So how do you pull those two pieces together?
Yeah, well, I did sort of a combination of things. The books take place mostly in a town that I made up called Knightsbridge. And like Tina, I just thought it would be so much fun to invent my own town. And I've got a big map on the wall in my office with everybody's house and all the streets and everything. But I also realized as I was writing it that I wanted to go to familiar places and also places that the readers may know. So I have my team, the Knightsbridge I have it set pretty much in central New York. It's called the Mohawk Valley. It's at the foot of the Adirondack Mountains. And it's a short distance from Saratoga Springs, a short distance from Syracuse and Liverpool, where I'm from. So not only did I have the pleasure of making up the town in both 1934 and 2014, 80 years apart, but I've done a lot of research for all the surrounding places where Stephen and his team, where the investigation takes them. So I had a chance to see what all these familiar places looked like back then. So in addition to the geographical location, I've researched the slang, clothes, cars, what's in everybody's house. I have an old 1929 Sears catalog that I use constantly. What does the washing machine look like? The percolator, the Christmas decorations, everything is in there. I mean, it's like my most important resource. And then I go to the Albany, New York State Library in Albany, and I read the newspapers that came out the weeks that my book take place, or books take place, and the magazines. So, yeah, time and place for me.
I love that. It's fun to get to have so many different things you can play with and be grounded in reality. And then when you see that it just clicks, you're like, this is the piece I needed. It's like, you're on the right track.
Yeah.
All right, we are rolling through our time, so I wanted to do a quick speed round here. So these are going to be a few questions, just quick answers each, 1, 2, 3 words. All right, I'm going to start here with Lita. What is your sleuth's favorite food?
Well, every tooth in her mouth is a sweet tooth, so she loves anything sweet. She loves ice cream. I think in the first book, actually, she's going to a convenience store to get an ice cream sandwich. So jelly donuts, chocolate, anything sweet.
The ice cream, I'm going to jump in here. I was going to say ice cream, but in my book, I found that I was actually talking about Maggie talking much more about cornettos, which are an Italian pastry that she can't resist having every single morning, even though she promises herself she'll have muesli the next day. Tina, how about you?
Yes. Bianca too. She loves her cornetto, but she's in America, so she has croissants and cappuccino, her favorite.
Carol, sweet tooth?
No, unfortunately, Stephen loves meatloaf. Not as exciting as croissant, but he loves meatloaf. Actually, I don't think Stephen's ever had a croissant. He's probably never heard of cornettos.
That's a very good point. All right, Carol, what is Stephen's biggest pet peeve?
That he has to work so much. In 1934, it was a given that you work 6 days a week, and he would like some more free time to visit the future with Olivia and go out and see all the cars.
Tina, how about you?
Bianca's pet peeve is that many of the villagers won't consider her a local. Sometimes when she gets introduced to someone and she's been there for a couple of years and, people are saying, oh, it's so nice to meet you. You're the newcomer, it really gets to her.
Lida, how about you?
In my latest book, not getting served her dinner. That starts it all for her.
That's an excellent one. For Maggie, it is incompetence. She hates nothing more than someone who thinks their job is important and they're going to block everything but really do nothing. Bureaucracy drives her crazy. Rome and Maggie on that front are not a good fit.
No.
All right. Is your so I'm going to start with you here, Lida. Is her glass half empty or half full?
Oh, half full, definitely. That's one thing we have in common, half full.
Tina?
Right now, it's half empty. Her son lives far away. Her husband's passed away. She's new and she's trying to make friends. So right now, it's half empty, but it'll get better.
She's got an character arc. It's important. Carol, how about you?
I'm with Lida. Stephen and I are both half full.
So is Maggie. She is an optimist. She might get beaten down, but she always thinks, I can do this. I can truck through. If you just keep going, things will come to pass. Okay, last one. What did your hero want to be when she or he grew up? I'm going to start with you, Carol.
Stephen always wanted to be a cop.
Like that. I am going to say that Maggie always thought that she would be the CEO of a big company. And then when she was laid off, it kind of put an end to those plans. How about you, Tina?
Hot air balloon pilot.
Wow.
All right.
Attention with that one.
I like that one. Lida, how about you?
Well, mine wears a special belt that her father custom made for her PI father, and it carries a Japanese throwing star, a shuriken. So I think what you wanted to be when she grew up was Wonder Woman with kind of like a magic belt. I think, anyway, a superhero.
Love it. Perfect. Ladies, this has been so much fun. Thank you. I think that we have some questions here. So let's see here. It looks like oh, go ahead.
Hello, this is the voice of Constance. I'm just going to do audio so that all of your screens stay larger, because if I pop up, then it'll make all of you guys smaller. So we'll start off with our first question being, what kind of research did you do for this book and series? And you guys have touched on points here and there, especially like when we talked about setting and then like with the food and pet peeves and whatnot. But was there any particular research, like skill set or investigational, anything along that lines? Any cool research that you did for these books?
Well, I'll jump in for the police procedural part. I have a go-to cop, and the guy that that helped me the first two books used to be the chief of police in Syracuse, and the guy that I have now is the Onondaga County Sheriff's historian. Plus, he was a sheriff for 35 years. So with a police procedural, I need to know that all of the things that Stephen and his team do are correct. Like for the first book, I kept, Gary kept saying, you need a warrant for this, Carol. You need a warrant for this. You need a warrant for this. They can't just go in the person's house. So I would say that I've really done a lot of research with my cops, with my real cops on police procedure.
I would think art history for my books, that Rome and the ancient history is something that I knew quite a bit about just from classes in college as well as time spent in Rome. But there is a stolen painting in my book that I needed to do a fair amount of research in terms of who the artist could have been, what the movement, to make it valuable enough to be interesting, but not so valuable it would have been in a museum. So I had a lot of fun doing art history research.
So I do a lot of research in my books. I do excess research just because I want to see the whole picture. I may just use a very small portion, but I'll do major research. For example, in book 2, Murder Gone Missing, I learned that Los Angeles has a whole tunnel system underneath the city. I've grown up there and knew nothing about it. So I used the tunnel system in one of the places that Corey goes to. It's actually a college, because UCLA even has a tunnel system beneath it. So that was something totally new to me, being an Angelino that I didn't know. I do a lot of research, even though it's fiction.
And my village is fictitious, but I have done some research about some of the aspects of the history in the area and the architecture and things like that to be consistent and not just assume or understand. But because all of my stories are fictitious, I get a lot more leeway.
Awesome. And then, sorry, I saw Jen's message pop up for a second, and then my brain stalled and was like, it was like, my brain can't read and speak at the same time. So sorry about that. But yeah, if you guys look in the right side, I'm just going to give it a shout out now. To stay in touch with everybody, they have mailing lists, and the links are going to be in the chat. So make sure you check that out so you can stay up to date with everything. So the next question that we've got is, what part of your newest book brought you the most joy to write?
For me, I can tell you the ending. Just getting to the end is a very joyful occasion. And also, my setting for the ending was a total surprise. Again, it was somewhere that I'd lived and been to a lot, but never visited this particular area. So I can't say what it is because it'll give a lot away, but definitely the ending.
For me, if I were to say the most joyful scene to write was there's a scene in Winter Witness where Bianca is doing the Christmas tree, and she's doing it alone because her husband's passed and her son lives far away, and she watches It's a Wonderful Life. And what she's trying to do is recreate a tradition that she and her son had always done. And because that's something I do with my son. So I just did this the other night, right? I just did my tree with It's a Wonderful Life on, and I Skyped through with my son because he Skypes with me every time. We do it every year, right? So it's been 10 years we've done the Christmas tree this way. So it's very joyful, and we quote, we all do the quotes, the movie backwards, and it's very touching scene for me to write and to read.
Okay. I have a secondary plot in Threshold of Deceit, and it involves a character named Isabel, who it found out she's about 80 years old, and she found out she had a twin and they were separated at birth. And when that storyline was resolved, I actually cried. I actually cried while I was typing it. And every time I revised it, which was at least 6 times, I cried again. So that was joyful, but yet I cried. So
I would say for me, there's a scene where Maggie does a little illicit breaking and entering with her nemesis, Faye. She is sort of the queen bee of the expat set who Maggie has never really felt too connected to. And sort of she gets a little goaded into this, and as the two are breaking in, Maggie has this sort of, wait, I'm more powerful than Faye. This woman seems so great. And all of a sudden she wasn't really going to follow through. I'm actually the cool one. And it was just a lot of fun to write and to have this rule-following, law-abiding woman You're like, I can jimmy a lock. We can get in there. Let's look around. It was just fun for me to see her in a different light and to have her kind of get a leg up on a woman who'd always been making her feel like she's 10 pounds too heavy and a little boring.
Nice. And this one is kind of pulling back to more for writing in general, but what is it specifically about the mystery genre that called to you above all other genres for writing?
I love the puzzle. As a reader, I love having a puzzle to frame a story. And I think the mystery genre, isn't just about the crime. We really didn't even talk about our crimes very much today. We were talking about the characters and the arcs that they go on and the journeys. And so I love the fact that in the mystery genre, you get a puzzle, but you get that character arc. And, in the ones where we're writing series, that you get to know those characters and live with them and then stay with them as they continue in their community. For me, that's why I just keep coming back to that genre as a reader and as a writer.
Yeah, it's true. The mystery genre is, especially the murder mystery, it's all about motivating. It's all about a device so that we can understand motivations and how people tick. And so in a murder mystery, it's just accelerated, right? In a non-murder mystery story, you're still investigating those things, but because there's this crime at the center, it's, you can really peer in. You have permission to peer in,
It's the genre that I most like to read. And also, I get some vicarious satisfaction, a lot of it, when a bad guy or girl is taken down. We can't do that in real life as much as maybe sometimes we'd like to, but when someone's turned over to the law, we feel good.
Yeah, I agree with what everybody said, but I like the idea in a mystery. There are so many characters who are not what they seem, people wearing a mask, and I really enjoy that very much. I like reading it, and I have really, really enjoyed writing those kinds of characters. It's a really good challenge to write a character who is believable in a particular way, and then at the end you find out they are nothing like you thought they were. I like that.
Nice. And this next question, I think is interesting because you guys have mentioned a couple times how there's that line between balancing kind of the suspension of disbelief of being able to believe certain things are going on with your characters. And so this one is, do any of your amateur sleuths get into trouble with the law enforcement? And what was kind of your trick with balancing that relationship?
Well, my character is always walking the tightrope. And every single book she gets into trouble, but not in enough trouble to make it serious. I'm sorry to say she's always expecting to be arrested for something she's doing because she breaks and enters on the regular. She has to because usually the clock is ticking. In book 2, her best friend was about to be accused of murder, and she could not let that happen. So she did many things she should not have done, but she's got that sidekick who's an assistant DA who keeps pulling her back and trying to bring her back to the right side of the law, but she's always walking that line. So it could be any day now that she might end up in jail.
And I think for mine, other than a little breaking and entering on the side, she really thinks she's helping the police. She thinks she is doing them a service, and she's a little surprised when she finds out that they aren't looking for information she's gathering for them. It's a little bit of naivete, but it's also, she's the type of woman who, if she sees something that needs to be solved, she's going to solve it. If she sees a problem, she's going to take care of it. And so why wouldn't they appreciate her coming to them saying, here's the timeline of everything that happened, because I don't think you asked about it. So in her head,
I think Bianca is very much like Maggie in that respect, is that she sees a problem, she needs to address it. And she doesn't really get in trouble with the law, but she definitely crosses his patience, so she gets into scrapes, I like to say, because she's doing things she's really not supposed to be doing, but I think Lita said, not enough to get her, right? Just enough to get her maybe they take 1 step forward and 2 steps back in their investigation or something like that.
Nice. And so we've got 2 more questions left. And this next one is, and I think for mystery series, this is always such an interesting question. For you as the writer, what do you think is the biggest difference between the first book in the series that you write and then all the subsequent books?
Well,
I'm on my first book, so I'm going to bow out, other than I hope the other ones are faster to write, because this first one took a long time.
Just on my first book, but I'm deep into my second, and I thought my second book would be, just a variety of my first, similar, but it is actually so different that I wonder why I bothered to learn as much as I did from the first book if I was going to break such different ground in my second book. I think we're going to have Lita answer this. And Carol, you have 3 and Lita has 4. So
Yeah, Lita, go ahead.
okay. Well, I'm afraid to say it doesn't get much easier, but when you are done, when you do reach the end with number 2 and 3 and so on, it's so much more gratifying because you have done it again. You have done it again. And as you go along the way, you know the characters better, you realize their capabilities far better and their weaknesses, and that gives you more to work with. The biggest challenge I have is with backstory. How much to tell? How much do you need to tell? So I kind of leave it alone and come back to it later. But we're still doing it, Carol, right? So we're obviously enjoying the process. It's just wonderful. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I agree. Writing the first book, I set it as a challenge to myself. And when I was finished, I was sort of gobsmacked. I was like, oh my God, I did it. I wrote a book. And now I'm getting ready to start plotting number 4. I just finished writing a pretty good draft of the 3rd one, and I'll do some more revisions. But I think what I've learned the most, and honestly, I forgot the original question, but what I've learned the most 3 books in is how I can put all the layers in that I want to have. I sort of have gotten into a style. I've written the first 3 pretty much in the same way, with a rough draft that's, very tight, about 60%. Then the end is a lot looser. By the time I get to the end, I realize the person I was going to have be the killer isn't the killer after all. So then I go back again and change things. That works out great because I think I did not accidentally give any clues because I didn't know who the killer was for the first 250 pages, which, in book 4, I swear I'm going to keep the same killer that I have in mind now. And there's a reason why I want to do that. So maybe I have to outline more. But I agree with Lita. I'm so thrilled I've been able to put these books together and find an audience. And I can't wait to sit down and write every day. I just love it so much. But yeah, it does not get really easier. It's just fun.
And then
You can do it.
our last question to wrap everything up will be, who do you prefer to write, the sleuth or the sidekick?
Ooh.
At the time,
I like my side.
Go ahead, Jen.
I like my side, writing about the sidekick. I feel like they bring sort of, Maggie's kind of my straight man, and I like having the side characters who bring in the witty dialogue and they spark and they push and they're the ones who sort of make things happen. So I find them really fun to write.
I like different things about Stephen and Olivia. I I have a lot of fun writing Stephen when he's on the quest to find the killer. I like working with his organization and how his mind works and how he goes off on this trail and that trail and finding evidence and so forth. I really like that. But what I like about Olivia is her excitement when she travels into 1934. So, you know, he's on a quest to find the killer and she's on an adventure in a new world. So I like both pretty evenly.
Well, I agree with Maggie. I think the sidekick is with Maggie. I called you Maggie, Jen. That's all right.
Same thing.
Maggie, I agree with Jen that the sidekicks are so much fun because they flesh out the rest of the story, right? So Bianca is my main character and I love writing her, but all these other people make these interesting asides and flesh things out. And like you said, spark and push, and you know, that's where the dialogue happens. So yeah, I enjoy writing them.
And I agree with Maggie and Bianca too, or Jen and Tina, because the sidekicks do add so much color to the story. Yeah. Because my heroine is so fixated on solving the crime that, you know, that's all she thinks about. But then they come in. Vera has a lot of common sense. Michael's like this geeky, I guess, culinary assistant, and then she's got the hunky DA. So, I mean, they just add more color and more character to the story, I think.
Nice. I think normally it's the quirky side characters that also give the fun little scenes and everything. So that, though, is time for us for today. Unfortunately, I have the villainous role of having to end the event, but I want to thank everyone so much for joining us. Thank you so much for all the amazing readers who came and asked questions, and thank you, Jen, Lita, Tina, and Carol for spending this afternoon with us and talking about your books. Everyone, don't forget, if you want to stay up to date on all of their stuff, that Jen has posted in the side where you can join all of their mailing lists. And also, to celebrate the new books, go out and purchase them. There's a buy link down below. Have an amazing afternoon, everyone, and we will see you on the next one. Bye!
Thank you.
Thank you.